We do have a quorum, Council, but I'm just trying to locate Councillor O'Leary because she expressly asked for the change. She's coming out for the 9th. She's on her way? Okay, so we'll just bear with a couple of minutes till Angela gets around the table. And it is my view that we will start the workshop on time. So we've got this one, these two funding items plus the neighbourhood amenity. So we'll really in your hands to keep questions short, sharp, specific, so that we can get on to the sizeable debate about the zoo after that. Right, thank you. Councillor O'Leary is in the house, so we will be. No, that's all right. We were just waiting for you. Yeah, Councillor O'Leary is in the house. Yeah, so we can now begin. And as requested, we're going to take these as a suite, but we're going to have the item around the momentum Waikato application addressed first. So I'll invite Calvin to introduce the key points of anything in that one.
Cool. Thank you, Madam Chair. Kia ora koutou, everybody. Welcome. I think you know who I am, although to Ollie and Te Pora, kia ora. So the basis of the paper is really to give you an overview formally of the PGF or Provincial Growth Fund application that we're making in partnership with Council. And we've termed this the anchor destinations concept. So the basis, the bigger picture is that there is a potential tourism anchor products that stem all the way from Rangariri in the north all the way through to Hobbiton and Waitomo in the south. And effectively you can see them as three areas, so the north of Hamilton City, the Hamilton City and the south. But because we are ready to go in terms of concept plans, partner funding and all the requirements of the PGF, the central part of that wider trail is ready to go as a PGF. Now, the reason we've picked up the role of making the application is simply because of the theatre and where that fits as one of the larger funding parts of the process. But all the advice we've had to date from ministers, senior advisors, has been to bundle up these projects into a portfolio which is larger. So on the handout or on the table you see the overall budget application currently is around 24 million. And that is of projects worth in total about 88. So there's really good partnership contribution there from all players, particularly Council. We've got really good processes in terms of either conceptual plans or engagement piece with communities across all of those projects. And what we're really applying for is partial funds for completion or to get through. From the briefing we had with you a month ago, Councillor Southgate raised a really good point about the museum, so we've agreed that absolutely that should be in there in terms of conceptual plans, because why would you master plan that whole area without including that? So we have included that as a feasibility to understand what could happen there and how that might work. But I think other than that, I just give that overview. We have spoken to the Regional Economic Development team. Each of these projects are in their war room in terms of projects that have come out of the regional summit they had. We have met with Waikato Tainui and different hapu about these projects themselves at a very conceptual level, both north and south, but these projects are underway as going concerns. With that, I'll take some questions, Madam Chair.
Thank you. We will take questions on this, and then, of course, if they're on wider funding questions, we'll hold those over for Lisa. I'm quite happy to take the recommendations in a suite as well, so we'll be in your hands on that. Councillor Mallett.
Sorry.
No? An accidental push. Councillor Pascoe.
Yes, so we're dealing with 10 at the moment, are we? Just questions on 10 and not on 9?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so on the momentum one at the moment, yeah.
Okay, just one question, and that it may be that Kelvin can't answer that question. Effectively, by this recommendation in the motion, does it mean that we're effectively cutting Hamilton City Council out from making any future direct applications to government, which would include the Lotteries Commission and all of the other quasi-government organisations, in the sense that, assuming that this is successful, and I assume parts of it will be, central government will look towards Momentum as being the future source of funding, future line of where that funding might come from?
So the short answer is no, it doesn't cut you down. In fact, within the detailed application form, it does talk about what future funding may be required from the source, from the PGF and other funding sources, but it doesn't preclude Hamilton City having its own application for other projects in the future. So, for example, with the museum feasibility, if there was work that came out of that, or there was future opportunity to develop more of Ferry Bank, absolutely. And in fact, Hamilton City making the application as part of a secondary piece to this actually shows that strategy we were talking about before.
Okay, thank you. And look, I'll be supporting the motion. Can I suggest a possible change and add in the wording of the motion, and that is that the committee approves Hamilton City Council priority projects being included in, and add the words "and supports an application by Momentum Waikato to the Provincial Growth Fund." So just adding the word "and supports" after "in."
Okay, so you've moved that. Is there anyone who would like to second that with the additional words? Councillor Tooman. Okay. Everybody happy with that? I see the subtle difference with what you're suggesting there, so it's good. Okay, questions. Councillor O'Leary.
Thanks, Madam Chair, and apologies for being a few minutes late. Kelvin, I'm just not sure. I understand the Embassy Park connection. I understand Te Awa Cycleway, some of the museum, but I don't understand why Hamilton Zoo, Waiwhakareke and Hamilton Gardens. Can you just explain to me why you want to attack those ones as well?
Yeah, so under advice from regional advisors and talking to ministers, they're looking for projects that are portfolio projects that generate additionality, is the term they use in the application. So that's either economic or job or other economic benefit that will generate from those. So the way we've looked at it is for the Hamilton Central's portfolio, these would be, the term at the moment is anchor destinations, from which if you get those developed to a standard and connected, they form the availability for other projects to then emanate off it. So whether that's local tourism product, whether that's Māori tourism product, whether that is hotels, whether that's more accommodation, whether that's more marketing, whatever it is. But if we can develop all of those as one project, that makes more sense than individual projects on their own. Okay,
I see. So you're saying to hopefully be successful in the fund and get a quantum that's meaningful.
Yes.
It's your best advice that you wrap up all of those things. So you'll basically be going with an application to this fund with, here's why you need to invest in this city/region.
Correct.
Because look at the stuff that we have, and it's everything and how that's all going to be connected, that'll all be in your proposal?
Absolutely.
Okay, and so we heard that and support the addition to the motion that Councillor Pascoe has just added, because we heard in the briefing, and Lisa, you talked to us about, it's certainly been my experience over the years, that when we go to central government, to funds like this, when we go to big other big philanthropic funds, that they need the asset owner involved. So even though Momentum will be applying to the fund, are we strong enough in that support capacity as the asset owner?
Yes. The application itself, it essentially is a first step. So as we progress and as we get support, we will be able to work through the details of that and how that's going to work. I suppose what I'd like to emphasise is the fact that we are looking to strengthen partnerships, and with this application specifically, one of the key alignments is showing the partnership approach and showing projects that actually benefit a wider range of not just community but organisations within the Hamilton City. So although this is a great approach to this application, it might not be the best approach moving forward to other applications.
Yeah, and now, and thank you, Madam Chair, for agreeing to have sort of these two items discussed. In the external funding program plan that we're ticking off as well, does this, I'm on page 113, does...
We are actually, I am taking them as a suite, but we were just doing questions on this front because I would like to treat everyone the same. And Rob, I think, had some questions on the second part of it also. So just, we will consider them as a suite, but can you hold that question to that bit?
Well, no, because it's relevant to this then. Okay, so I'll just reframe the question.
Okay.
So does, by going with momentum for this, how does that impact our a massive target within our 10-year plan? I think this is following on from what Councillor Pascoe just said.
Understand.
Is there any impact there for us?
So no, so again, within the application, the formal application as you work through it, so everything Lisa said is absolutely correct around the PGF is designed to generate and enable activity to then generate further economic activity, employment, jobs and additionality, as I said. So there is absolutely a question that even says, will there be further funding required following this application for specific projects or partners? And the answer would be, well, depending on the outcome of the feasibility, but yes. So the short answer is it will not hamper council's own ability to fundraise through the PGF for projects outside of any association with momentum.
Yeah, and if you're successful, will the application to the PGF contain detail so that you might want to say, look, I think, you know, you need this much for boardwalks and you need this much for something, or you're presenting that as we want a big bucket of money and here's why?
No, it's broken down, so the application will have each of those headings, and for each question, each of those projects will have the answer beside each one. So that's how we've approached it, so they can see how each project is broken down in terms of cost and what we've done, concept plans, where we've done engagement processes and all that. So they can see the whole, but it is always broken down by project. So it's not, and yet it requires you to do it at that level.
And that will be aligned to obviously the funding that we've put in against those projects in the 10-year plan as well.
Correct.
Yeah. If you're successful in achieving the funds, then you manage those funds, and then do you grant them back to the city for some of those projects? How will the money management happen?
Effectively, yes. So it won't be granted back, but it'll be on the, there'll be a part of the partnership agreement and the implementation. They work that through in terms of transfers of funds at the time when you get the approval. So we can work that through at the time, but the intention is that yes, it'll just be pass-through funds straight to council for the projects associated.
So where we have, say, the zoo, for example, in the entranceway, and there's the extended plan for the zoo and the park are, you know, is money that sits outside of the 10-year plan. If nothing that you would do, you wouldn't have control over what we've put into the 10-year plan and what we're hoping to. No. So in terms of timing and
correct. No. So basically, once we receive the fund, and there's different types. There may be different types of funding allocation for the different projects. So they might say to the theatre, well, we might underwrite you, but we'll give a grant to council. So depending on what they come up with their final decisions will determine how that's rolled out. But there is no ability for us to determine how holding any of your cash.
Yeah. And Kelvin, do you think that by momentum doing this and producing a fabulous glossy proposal to the government that they cannot refuse, do you think that packaging it up that way with your skills will attract any other of your philanthropic donors to those projects?
Oh, absolutely. This is actually a partnership. I mean, whilst we are doing the application, it's a partnership application, and it's got council all the way through it, and to the point where every time we finish a draft, we'll flick it back through Lance's team to make sure we've got all the details right. So from day one, all that we're simply doing is taking our resource and putting it together and adding our donors that have come from outside of council to the mix to show that the partnerships and the contributions, as I said, the application's for 24 million, but it totals a total project of around 88 million as it currently stands. So, you know, by bulking it up, we show that there's a greater partnership than would have been on its own.
And how confident are you you'll be successful?
I'm very confident.
Out of 1 to 10?
Ooh.
9.5.
All right, I'll write that down. Thank you, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bunting.
If you're 9.5 out of 10 confident, we don't need to ask any more questions, really, do we? Yeah, okay, just a couple of general ones, and thank you for clearing up about the fact that this is a one-off type situation, and, you know, hopefully it's successful when we do it again. But, Kelvin, are these the only projects that Momentum will be going for in this bid?
From a momentum perspective, yes. So the only other work that might come out of this first round of application may be the walking and cycling bridge. Yeah. But again, that's because once we know what the feasibility is and the true costings are, then you can go back in. Right. But the criteria we've set for ourselves is those projects that are within your LTP and that we know will commence within that 3-year window, yep, because that's got greater certainty for the funds to deliver funding to things that will occur, as opposed to, if you look at the list at the moment, there's lots of feasibility and study projects, yeah, all around 100,000, and the government are looking for projects to commence, right, and initiate things, and so that's where we've got these. Great, thank you. And this is probably to Lisa and Lance. If Momentum wasn't here, are these the ones we'd probably go for anyway, is that right? Or would we go for more or less? Or?
These would be exactly what we'd go for, right, and it's aligned with what we've got in the item 9 as well. Yeah, so. Yeah, okay.
And again, we would just reiterate how our projects connect with the wider Hamilton region and national tourism offering that's going on, and how we can enhance that from our point of view.
Okay.
And Jason Dawson's team's been involved in this too, so
good.
So they're well aware of what's going in this. So there's a whole bunch of people involved in this. Great, thank you.
Okay. That's some sort of, it's different. There are some sort of overlaps in the processing, and it's trying to navigate here. Yeah. Councillor Hamilton's next. Sorry. Yep.
Thanks, Chair. Sorry, I just didn't realise this.
Sorry, did I jump in? But anyway, carry on. Councillor Hamilton.
Sorry.
It's all right.
I didn't realise this had a please turn over, sorry. So it just answers potentially some of my questions here. So I'll leave that for now. You talked about the 20... Yeah, no, you talked about the 24 and the 88 million, Calvin, but I couldn't quite... What were they again?
So 24 is the application for a total, but collectively, the full cost of all those projects are around 88 mil.
Right. Yep. So you can't bid for the 88. You've got to. No. It's got to be a percentage of.
You could, but no, because that 88 in total, and you've already contributing. I can't remember what the number is. It's around what would be the difference between 24 and 88. Is what you're contributing already.
Okay. And in terms of the timing, to them. When do you want to get this all sort of done and dusted and off to them? Yeah,
look, so that's a really good question, because the biggest risk or the biggest unknown is the timing of when they'll come back to us with a decision. They are inundated, when I say they, government is inundated with proposals at the moment, and there's no indication of whether it's a 6-week turnaround or 2 months, and of course we're getting into Christmas, so we'd like to have it completed, the actual formal application completed and back to council within the next couple of weeks, and then get it submitted as soon as possible after that.
Nice. Do you think if you put your photo on the proposal, you'd get to the top of the pile?
No, not me. Yeah. Oh, the photo of the theatre, yeah, probably. But.
With the PGF, the funding, so there's that 24 million, do you know, will they speak to each item and say, we'll give you X for this, or they say, here's 10 million, you divvy it up how you want?
So our understanding is exactly like that. We'll put forward the portfolio of projects, and then they'll assess each of the projects and go, okay, what have we got? What's already allocated? What's the shortfall? How can we potentially go to other central government agencies, and how we can best collectively support this project? So again, like Calvin mentioned before, it could be a range of different funding options. It might not necessarily be a grant across the whole 24 million. It could be impact investing, it could be a loan, underwrite. It could be a whole range of different things that are applied to each of the projects.
Okay, and they give you that visibility. Yep. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mallett.
Thank you for your presentation. It's great to see that the Department of Fantasy Words has made its way to the central government. Additionality. And Angela just picked up on this, and I'm sure Angela didn't mean to, but Angela said something about the asset owner. We are not the asset owner for the theatre. No. Yeah. Okay. All right. No, that's cool. That's all I want to just make quite clear.
Thank you, Gary. Is that okay with you, Gary?
No, I just what's on the record. Later on, suddenly we end up owning the bloody thing. I don't want that to happen.
Well, Calvin knew what I was talking about.
I think the good thing here is that Momentum have got links to all the assets owners, including the regional theatre, so with a new trust being formed.
Councillor Taylor.
Hola. Hey, Calvin. Welcome. Hey, my ears, my eyes didn't prick up, or whatever they do, eyes, when I saw the river walking and cycle bridge there, and the 500k that you're asking for there. What are your sort of hopes and aspirations with that, and what other funding have you got in place?
Yeah. So at the moment, there is a historic concept plan that comes from the millennial gift, the idea back in 2000, and the Rotary Clubs of Hamilton are the groups that are contemplating working towards fundraising towards a walking and cycling bridge to see that proposal through, because it's their centenary in 2024. And there's a group of those people working with ourselves. But the funding mechanisms would be, if Rotary picked it up, so again, conceptually, it would be through Rotary, it would be through Momentum Fundraising, NZTA, and it would have to be form part of City Council's Hamilton access strategy, so we need to work that through and see if it fits and all those things first. So hence the reason the number we've got of 5.5 million is based off the Perry Bridge that they did at Horatu, and we've taken that and worked through the different span of the bridge, the river size here and those things. That's why the application's only for $500,000 to do the actual, is it feasible, is it conceptual, what are the costs? So that's all we're applying for at this point.
Sure, so that's purely just for the basic concept design at the start. That's cool. And the fact that the Rotary groups, if they do go for it, that they have this this anniversary in 2024, does that suggest that that's the kind of year that you might be aiming for, or they might be aiming for, in terms of getting this off the ground?
Well, no, part of the thinking was they've come forward a little early, and they haven't decided that, I should just make clear. Just to put,
you have,
don't want to throw Rotary under the bus, but the group that are working on this as a concept to put forward realised that it would make sense to get it built in line with the theatre and the Ferrybank development works, and then officially gift it perhaps at 2024 in that year. So they're just working through the timeframes, but that would make sense if you start doing that work now, and you can tie it into your the Ferrybank work and the Donny the jetty landings and all that sort of work. That would make sense.
Cool. Okay. And Ryan asked about timeframes in terms of application. What about in terms of a decision and acceptance or denial? What's your expectation there from the government?
Oh, so that was the point I was making before. We're not sure on, that's our biggest risk factor in terms of time. We don't know. It can be anywhere from 6 weeks to 2 months. It depends on how engaging they want to get on the work and what information we either haven't got or isn't clear. But I think Lisa said it well before. This is just the start of a process where we engage with. Once you've done the official application, there'll be meetings and they'll work through things and want to verify different information. So we can't give that. But in my head, I would like to think maybe 8 weeks.
Oh, okay, that's heartening. And just lastly, with the regional theatre, 10 million there. What other, in terms of government funding for that, what other cabs are there off the rank after this in terms of applications for the theatre?
Yep, so in total we've targeted around 14 to 15 million from central government, being 10 from this, 4 from lotteries grants, and about 2 to 3 between regional culture and heritage, which is the last end sort of work. So that's the 3 that we're currently focused on.
Okay, and in terms of the $10 million for this theatre here, I mean, it's pretty crucial, isn't it? Given the timeframes that we're looking at with construction of the theatre, this 10 million is pretty key.
At this stage, it would be pretty key. Yeah, I mean, we've got some other funding coming through that we can hopefully name shortly. But this would be, if we got this money before the end of this year, or approval of this funding at the end of this year, that really gets us at the point where we pretty much go, because we'd leap to around 80% of fund.
80%?
Because we're at 68% now, so another 10 million of the 74 would get us there.
That's great. Thanks, Calvin. Very supportive of this.
Cool.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councillor Henry.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and thank you so much, Calvin and Lisa, for the report. Look, I just want to follow on from Councillor Taylor about the co-contribution, and I know where Rotary stands at the moment, but some of the other ones, is there anything specific, or are they just, at the moment, you know, they will contribute, but there's no specific numbers yet? Like for the regional, you said something about the regional theatre, which will come forward, somebody. Waikato University, for example, for Waiwhakariki or Hamilton Sue, is there anything specific, or just at the moment it's just in goodwill that they will contribute?
No, either they've contributed or they're pledged and confirmed in terms of agreements.
Okay, so there's already specifics there for each one of them. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, councillors. I will now turn to report 9, and I'm going to take both resolutions one after the other at the end of the discussion, just in case there is any residual overlap in the discussion. Lisa, is there any points you want to make, or in regards to your report?
There was only one really that I wanted to make, and I suppose this PGF application, if anything, really supports the funding program plan that is coming up for approval now. It's something that we can actually go to other funders and say, as a collaborative approach, we have applied to the PGF, and so it will only strengthen any other asks we ask in the future that's to do with the plan. So I just wanted to kind of touch on that to really say that anything we're doing in the PGF is only going to strengthen and support the program plan that we're looking to implement.
Okay. So in the rest of the report, we'll take it as read and take questions. Councillor Pascoe.
Thank you. I might have self-answered the question, but I just had problems with paragraph 14 on page 108. I really didn't understand what that meant, although I notice it's been replicated on page 115. Does it mean, and please excuse me if I've misunderstood it, the blue part is the total of paragraph 13, and the 31 million in the orange section is not related to the 3 million in the one above, but is the total amount of the total value of all the applications that we've made?
So just to clarify, like all funding plans, we always look to identify at least 50 or 60% more of what we actually need to implement and deliver the program. So that's what that paragraph 14 indicates. So over the 10 years, we've got a $20.5 million target. Yep. So in order to meet that, through our planning, we would look to identify at least 31 million of opportunities of value, so we can mitigate any unsuccessful applications through the process. Okay,
that wasn't quite so clear in the report, but I think it's a bit clearer in the paper. So based on past experience, we're quite confident that applying for 31.755 million should all things being equal, result in us picking up the 20.5 million with our fingers crossed and a deep breath.
Like anything, no funding is guaranteed.
Yep.
So I would like to say that, but based on, fundraising models, that is a confident model to go by.
Okay, thank you. And just one last question on page 116, under tactics, where you've got grant funding, and you've listed a number of organisations there. Do you need help with any other names or organisations? Because I noticed that there are some who have previously helped fund, like the Mary Potter Trust, the Donny Trust. There are lists of families and firms on various plaques up at existing gardens who have contributed either in kind or with cash. Should they, I assume that they remain on our lists and are regularly shoulder tapped to see if they've got interest in particular projects that we're doing?
Absolutely. If you go to the last page 118, this document is intended to be reviewed annually.
Yep.
So I guess what we've put in the grant funding is really the first year of targeting specific funding. So as we progress, as we find our outcomes, as we look further into these applications, these will be amended and changed and then brought back to council.
Okay. So would you like us to let you know who we think may be, or who have been past funders and who might be potential funders? Because, sometimes organisations and individuals mention to us particular projects that they have a specific interest in, and they may not have been previously on your lists, but may have a particular interest in a specific project that we're doing.
Absolutely. This plan will actually will rely on staff, internal GMs, CEOs and all councillors to come together and help identify key networks, partners and potential donors in the future. So any insight to that is absolutely welcome.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor O'Leary.
So Lisa, just so I'm 100% clear on what Councillor Pascoe asked on point 14, where it says a recommended 50 to 60% of additional opportunities is to be identified over and above the external funding target to mitigate unsuccessful outcomes, means we need 20.5 mil, you're going to apply for 31.7.
We're going to identify 31.7 if we need to go through that process. So it's a never-ending kind of scenario where we find out an outcome. An outcome might be half successful,
and we don't get how much we have asked for, and we're
exactly.
Yeah. So you're going. So you're not going. So then, because the GM said yes, but you said no. So you're not going to apply for 31. You're just going to find all of these funders with all of these buckets of money to that amount. Because if you fall short on one, you know that there's a possibility to go to this one, this one, this one. Okay. And then just on, this is where I need the crossover with momentum, just on page 108 on point 13, so I understand. So in our 10-year plan, we've got 15 million external funding, that's right, for the Hamilton Gardens. And then on the back of the momentum sheet, they are going to apply to PGF for 3.5, is that correct? So that if that was successful, then that 3.5 comes off that 15.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Excellent. Right, thank you.
Māngai Thompson-Evans.
Sure. Just on page 109 and 23, you've got there that there's no cultural considerations for the moment and that they'll be dealt with as they appropriately come along. But I also consider that the momentum, there's a lot of cultural consideration and engagement in there that perhaps could have been contained in the report. Is that what you mean about when it comes along, or?
Yeah, so the intent was really around the considerations will be considered as the projects progressed. Yeah. So, and these reports are really about the fundraising or funding required.
Yeah, have I. For also along with page 116, we've got the grant funders listed out there, asking about a consideration to central government's budgets around non-departmental appropriations, tagged specifically for iwi Māori or for Māori projects, and if they're going to be looked at or even alluded to in the future. It opens up a whole another avenue and level of partnership and involvement that we can partner with on that.
I think when we work through detail, like, you know, you and I had a chat the other day about Waiwhakariki, and you had some ideas on that, and in the management plan for the park, it talks about obviously the relationship with Tainui, and we've had discussions with previous Tainui management, and we need to renew those. I think there are opportunities there to expand the thinking around that and what we can do there around education programs, telling the stories of the history, all those sorts of things. So some of the feasibility studies will be built on as time goes by.
Thank you.
Councillor Mallett.
Thank you. On page 116, you've got a list of potential entity, central government primarily, not all, but it's got a lot of lotteries, significant projects, Lottery Environment and Heritage, Lottery Community Facilities Fund, Lottery Pacific Development Fund. We have a policy of not funding from gambling proceeds, don't we?
Our policy states that we cannot apply to gaming trust funding and Sky City Hamilton. It does not include lotteries, which is central
so it's not
government.
gambling per se?
Poker machine.
Thank you. And just one other, the Well Energy Community Support and Well Energy Impact Fund, what is the difference between those two?
So like Well Energy have a range of different funds, just like central government does. So one is community support, so it'd be community driven kind of projects that support community, whereas the impact fund looks at potentially, to use a lesser word, more high level impactful kind of investment.
It's not energy related stuff, not limited energy related stuff?
Every time they open the fund, they put a priority statement out, and so we need to align with that in order to be...
Thank you.
Okay, thank you everyone. So now we're going to take the recommendations. We'll go with this item that we're currently on, which is the recommendations to 9. Lost it now. Which is on page 107, which is that we approve the external funding program plan to raise external funding as per detailed in the report. Do I have a mover or a seconder? Councillor Casson will move. Mangai Te Ua will second. We're just about to go up. There's only one at the moment. And while we're waiting for that, we're in discussion or debate. With the mover, of course, gets the opportunity to go first to speak to the motion, if you wish.
I think it's a no-brainer, really. And this is speaking on both 9 and 10, or just 9? Just 9?
Just 9 at the moment.
9. Okay, yeah, this is a no-brainer. Look, if we can apply to these sort of funds, this is less money that our home owners or home renters in Hamilton have to fork out of their own pockets, apart from tax, of course.
Thank you. Did you want to say something as a seconder? No? Okay. Councillor Gallagher?
Yeah, I think I just want to note also by the presentation with momentum. I've always been of the view that where you have a significant external organisation, like Momentum as an example, leading certain things, that's a huge advantage to you, and that's why I advised the previous mayor and this council around our river plan, why we need to really build those partnerships and, you know, look at the external leadership and acknowledge that. And it just seems to me, if you look at those projects, and obviously the zoo, Whaiwhakariki get that, regional theatre, Hamilton Gardens development, Riverside boardwalks, Embassy Park connection, Waikato walking cycling bridge concept design, museum concept, that those first four, as I understand it, am I correct, they're all related to the river plan? And it just seems to me that when this workshop comes up with Natasha again, I really want to do some micro detail, because these are the series of building blocks, and we should be absolutely be joined with momentum more or less at the hip. I think this is fantastic, and also I get the incredible synergy where an external group does the driving. I thank you, if I may, through the chair, for your excellent work. And this is really, again, it goes back again to the previous Hardacre Mayoralty, Margaret Forsyth, where we had a one-stop shop for this type of thing. I think that's good, and I think this is all coming to fruition. But it seems to me in our workshop sessions we do need to be looking at the incredible opportunities around partnership. And for example, if I'm on the right track, the bridge was in the original Waikato River Plan, sort of year 20 or whatever, year 10, year 15, potentially that particular iconic aspect of a river plan development with the iconic theatre could be sooner rather than later. And it seems to me that I just can't stress enough, we must seize the opportunity and how we sort of build those partnerships. And certainly again, in the previous Mayoralty we had a special session at Arts Post where we met with some key groups, there were key funders. So all of those things I think are just really important, and I just hope that we don't drop the ball on some of this stuff.
Thank you. Councillor Mallett.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you. I'll support the motion, not because I support any or all of the projects, but because the projects are currently baked into our 10-year plan. Not supporting external funding would only harm our ratepayers. So that's the basis upon my vote.
Thank you very much. No more discussion. We'll go to the vote, please. I'm just going to take this one. Well, I don't think it's going to be material to run them together. I'm going to take them one at a time. So we're just going on the funding plan, item 9. I think it was important to take the debate together, but we've done that, and I think we're all clear. So, item 9.
The motion is carried unanimously.
Now we're moving to the motion on item 10. From the discussion, that might be material to a few councillors or it may not. So we're in discussion. Any discussion? We'll need a mover and a seconder. Councillor Bunting, Councillor Hamilton. Why? No, they did the first one. We only took one. Did they? Oh, apologies. Okay, sorry. Backward and forward. Okay, you have moved it and you have seconded it. That's right, of course, you did put the little amendment in. Absolutely. There you go. Thank you. Okay, so discussion. Councillor Pascoe is the mover.
Thank you. Look, I'm going to echo Councillor James' comments for the earlier debate, and I think this is even more of a no-brainer, this initiative here. I think the Provincial Growth Fund, I get the sense from central government that they're looking for the best outcomes based on some scale around regions rather than individual councils or individual cities or individual towns. So I think an application coming in, presumably, which will also include, and Kelvin's gone now, I think, but will also include applications from other local government areas, is really the role of Momentum Trust and the one that's going to get the biggest bang for bucks from central government. This initiative to me is really no different than RATA and other initiatives that we run in this region, and I think if we reflect on the outcomes of RATA in particular, we get much better outcomes going in joint applications on behalf of a region than we do when we go on behalf of ourselves, and that is Hamilton City. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Casson.
Yeah, same as before. Thank you, Lisa, and thank you, Kelvin, wherever he is. 9.5 out of 10 confidence scale was encouraging, I take it. And these projects here and the funding that we're applying for with Momentum, with the Provincial Growth Fund, ticks all their key criteria actually in the fund, in the Growth Fund, because it's to lift productivity in the region, it contributes to the objectives of the PGF, creates additional value without avoiding duplication, having a link to the regional priorities and support by stakeholders, and being well managed and a appropriate risk reward thing there. So look, it is another, like Rob said, it's 24.5, if it comes off, $24.5 million that our house owners and our house renters do not have to fork out of their own pockets apart from tax. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mallard.
Thank you. Similar to James, I don't support the spending of ratepayer money on any of these projects. However, as I said before, they're baked in the cake. They're in our 10-year plan, and the way I see it, if this funding doesn't come through, our ratepayers get smashed for more. So it would seem logical to vote for the support from this third funding authority. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll make a few comments myself, if I may. I think this is an excellent initiative. We certainly get nowhere when we apply on a project-by-project basis. I think we've come to a time where people buy into a vision and a long-term vision, a consistent vision that doesn't keep changing underneath them, something that they understand the direction of travel and the outcomes, which is what I like about this approach, underpinned by all the excellent work that Lisa and her team have done. These projects listed have been well known and well supported on a general public basis. Individual councillors may love some and not like some others as much, but it was tested through a democratic process of the long-term plan, and it is what it is. I think we need to keep the ship on a consistent course, keep driving for the city that we want, and I think this will attract attention, because each of these individual elements make the other elements stronger. We know from the Hamilton Waikato tourism presentation that they gave us at the previous meeting that we need a suite of attractions to really build Hamilton as a destination. And so that's why I'm very happy to support the recommendation as it is up there today, and we will go to the vote. Oh, did you want to write a reply? We'll go to the vote, please.
The motion is carried unanimously.
Thank you, councillors. And we will now move on to the Neighbourhood and Amenity Reserves Management Plan Review. Welcome. So I think the report is quite fulsome and we can take a lot of the detail as read, but it would be good if you would be able to talk to the key points in it and anything that you think council should be particularly cognizant of in supporting your staff recommendation.
Certainly. Good afternoon. I'm Sean Stirling, planner. This is Jamie Searle from the Community Business and Planning. Yeah, for the most part, everything is in the report, but I guess the key points to be cognizant of is this is a statutory requirement. The review was approved as part of the decision in this committee on the 7th of June. There's a mandatory 2-month public consultation period as part required by the Reserves Act. And for the most part, it's really the key considerations. The the management intent of the draft plan hasn't changed or departed significantly from the operative plan, but they're through the mandatory review process and the inclusion of the required inclusion of the additional reserves, the opportunity to update the plan has also been taken. At that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. I just have one short question myself. Given that we had the biodiversity strategy this morning, and I was just, so that was top of mind when I started reading this as well, and this, because this is part of our opportunity to improve on some of that. I noticed that we talk about ecological significance as it exists, but we don't make any reference to the biodiversity strategy per se. It's not. I know it's in development, but I wondered why that was. And in particular, for example, on page 132 of the report, when you're talking about the natural environment, you're talking about maintaining and enhancing areas of ecological significance, cultural, aesthetic or ecological significance, which I totally support. I just wondered whether this only includes what's there already, or is there potential to build upon that?
So the scope of this management plan is limited to obviously all the existing reserves. Each of the reserves in the management summaries have got primary functions that have been identified to each of those. Those which have been identified as ecologically important or significant reserves in terms of function will look to sustain and enhance those. I guess in terms of direct reference to the biodiversity strategy, like you mentioned, it isn't a current strategy, so it's not something that I've included in there, but decisions made under the management plan would also need to be cognizant and adhere to the future
Yeah, I
biodiversity
suppose where
strategy.
things will talk to each other in the end, being these are
Inherently.
spaces for purpose. I just did overhear Professor Clarkson say something about peppered green spaces and the opportunity that exists. So what you were saying to me is that if one of those is has a primary function, amongst its primary functions as an ecological reserve, then if it's identified you could do more to enhance biodiversity on that, you can then take up that opportunity?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Mallard.
Thank you, and thank you for your report. And I did spend some time reading this report, spent most of the time actually looking through the actual parks at the back. What will it do, the report? Are there any recommendations here to change a reserve?
So the report's asking for approval to go to public consultation on the draft plan. The draft plan...
Sorry, this draft plan, then?
Yes, that draft plan. Its purpose is essentially outlining council's commitment to the community about how those reserves will be managed into the future. In terms of the changes...
Can I just stop you there?
Sure.
Oh, sorry, I was just going to ask you there's a whole lot of principles on what you're going to do. And then I went through all of the parks, and quickly scanned them all just because it was quite interesting. And I couldn't see any, this park we're going to do this to, this park we're going to do that to. So how can the people consult to you on that?
There are two key audiences to this plan. The public is one, and also the operational staff. In terms of how they manage the reserves. So there aren't any specific projects outlined in this, and the intention is to raise the plan up a level, to keep it strategic, to provide guidance on specific projects which will be made underneath the plan. So in terms of any specific changes to the levels of service on the reserves within the plan, that's been intentionally left out so that we don't limit what we can do or what is contemplated by the plan.
So you will be hoping to get from the public things like no one ever uses this park, this reserve. do something, do it, or there's tons of things that people want to use on this reserve, but there's no facilities there, that sort of stuff. Is that what you're wanting to get back?
In part, we want feedback on what's provided in the plan, but also the information on how they would like that reserve to be developed in the future is useful, but our intention is not to put that specifically into this plan, it's further to understand their aspirations for each reserve and make sure that the strategic objectives for those reserves are consistent with those.
For example, and I can't find it, and I saw it last night, I'm just trying to find it, well, that's why I'm dragging this out. There was one park that was quite a small one, and it said something about the neighbours use it for parking or something like that. So surely that's a situation where no one's, it should just be the reserve, well, perhaps the reserve status should be taken off it. We should acknowledge that, ask the neighbours to buy it off us or something like that, and then accept that it is of no value. It appears to me to be of no value with regard to the principles we've got at the start, and just acknowledge that that's the case, things have changed, and this one is no longer useful. And I'm sorry, I can't find the park. It's the reserve or whatever it is.
I believe the reserve you're talking about is Galway Reserve. I guess there are some existing arrangements on various reserves.
Got a bloody good memory.
Well, there's not that many. So
it is, yes, it was on.
To answer your question, it's not the intention of the plan to provide specific operational detail on decisions that are going to be made on each of the reserves. It's really to set a strategic framework for the operational staff who end up making those decisions with guidance to make sure it's consistent with the rest of Council's plan, policies, and also that the decisions that are being made, as long as they're consistent with this, are consistent with community outcomes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sorry. I just don't see how that's going to work. So there's going to be another iteration of this later on, is there?
If I can, we've stayed away from getting into the detail around what kind of operational, whether a bin goes here or a bin goes there, or where the path goes. The idea is to get buy-in from the community around the strategic approach to managing these reserves. We will take this opportunity to capture some of the feedback on some of the more detailed things, and that's what starts to package up what we put up to an annual plan or an LTP if it's not already funded. We already know through satisfaction surveys that our local residents are highly satisfied with our local parks. I think it's in the mid-80s. So I think, and we've got other mechanisms for kind of capturing their views, like the feedback we've received through the more recent LTP. The consultation we'll go through for playground, or on the playground plans and so forth. So there are all these other touch points with the community around what capital projects or improvements they might want. But this is about just keeping it high level and making sure we're generally doing the right thing and managing these parks in the way that the community wants us to manage them.
Okay, so the way you've described it to me, it strikes me as being a waste of time and money then.
Oh, okay, that's your opinion.
Yeah. Don't you think this is a waste of time and money?
It's a statutory obligation.
Yeah,
Okay.
but
Okay, that's a leading question, Councillor Mallett.
I don't care if it's a leading question or not. I want to find out what's going on. Okay, now you may not be interested, but I am, and I think the people I represent might be too.
Keep the questions to the fact of the report, please.
So I'm trying to find out.
So the answer to your question is no, it's not a waste of time and money, in my view.
Okay, I think a lot of ratepayers might think it is. So just to be very, very clear, you talked about some high-level things, and you're going to ask the citizens and residents and ratepayers, blah, 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 what do you think of these high-level things?
Their view on the plan and the approach to managing these types of neighbourhood parks, yes.
If it helps, Councillor Mallett, this is entirely consistent with the approach that was taken to Lake Domain, which you'll remember your councillor representative.
Again, yeah.
Either way, it's
However,
entirely consistent
I
with
think
the
the
strategic
At least we're
governance view.
consistently appalling, that's great.
I think the staff have been quite clear and answered your questions, and we'll move on, please. Mangai Tuua.
Madam Chair, my question was in a similar vein as Councillor Mallett's first question was. I couldn't see in the plan where the specific projects were for each specific reserve, and if I was wanting to provide feedback as a member of the community on the reserve, there was nothing to show what project was going to happen on that specific reserve. So I think you've answered that question, that this is a strategic document and those specific projects will be developed at a further time. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So I see you've done consultation with Te Hao, Te Whenua, Kirikiriroa. Given the consultation is going to be done through what is probably the busiest time of the year, my second question is, what are your plans for engaging with Mātāwaka or urban Māori communities bordering on those reserves?
So there's a minimum period of 2 months for the consultation, which is written in the Reserves Act, which was hasn't been reviewed since 1977. So that period hasn't been updated for a long time. So you're right in that it's towards the end of the year, but our anticipation is that most of the engaged public will engage within the first segment of that. To answer your question around additional engagement with other groups, we will be alongside doing the public consultation, engage interested parties, like you've just mentioned as well, directly to ask for their feedback.
Just to add to that, we will rely on our community advisors and their strong relationships with the community to touch base with those parties that you've identified.
Thank you.
I think that's something we can also follow up and put link you together to discuss how that might work a bit better. That would be useful. Yeah. Okay. Is that fine? Okay. Thank you, Councillor Pascoe.
Yes, thanks, Chair. My question is around paragraph 14 in the financial considerations. And while I appreciate that we have already budgeted for this, I sort of had the understanding, and this might be a better question directed through you, Chair, to the General Manager, that we were to get some estimates of costs for this, in this instance, for this public consultation. Seem to be getting a certain amount of creep slipping into quite a number of our reports now, where we're not getting indications of what the cost is going to be. So I suppose my question is, do you have an indication as to what the cost is going to be, both in terms of internal costs and external costs to conduct this this consultation? So
I think, I mean, for this has been done internally, totally internally, right?
Yep.
So I think the hours that we put in the original report were 100 hours, and we've been doing it within that time. The consultation might have a small, very insignificant cost of a few $100s around public notices, but we're utilising council's social media pages and so forth to connect with the community. Is there another component to your question?
Well, I guess that adds to about 11,000, doesn't it? What I'm looking for is perhaps these reports just to give us a little bit of an indication as to what the cost is. I know it's been budgeted for, so it's not an additional cost, but at least it puts on the table some perspective around...
Yeah, point taken. I'll take responsibility for that and make sure in future we have the number of hours and what the external costs are as well, so the total costs are there.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Gallagher.
Yes, Dawson Park, can you... I can't find that. I think I know why, but I can't find it. Maybe I've looked in the wrong place. Dawson Park.
Have you got a question about it?
Well,
or just
well,
just
first of all,
where
it's not there. I don't think it's there, but maybe I'm looking at the wrong... I've gone on an alphabetical thing. Tell me, I've gone Frankton and then Galway, so I've gone from 22, 23. So I've got Frankton, I go to Galway. Farnborough. Wait a minute.
So I think
there's after Exeter, it should be between Exeter Park and
Dawson
Farnborough.
Park is covered by this.
DD, sorry. Got it. Dixon.
So there is an answer to your question.
No, it should be between Cullimore and Derby. Sorry.
There is a question answer.
Dawson Park's managed under the Sports Park Management Plan, which is why it's not in this one.
So just repeat that again if you would.
It's managed under a separate management plan.
Under the sports park.
The Sports Park Management Plan, which is why it's not in this document.
Okay, so we can follow that up.
Well, okay, just then what I want, and forgive me because we're dealing with significant sized parks, Just to repeat for me slowly, these are all not sports parks, I mean?
That's correct. The reserves within this plan are neighbourhood or amenity reserves.
So how do you define a neighbourhood reserve?
It's defined, if you have a look to page 129 of the document, it provides a summary of what makes neighbourhood and amenity reserves on that page.
A kickable open space, play areas, green setting.
So the reserves that provide for informal recreation rather than organised recreation like your sports parks.
So I think it would be quite relevant to actually look at where there are a number of the so-called sports park that intersect in terms of this use, because they're multi-use. Dawson Park is of course under a lease or some arrangement with Hamilton East School till about 2025. It is a classic example of a small open neighbourhood space. And so and the GM can advise, is I think there are some other categories that sit in your sports parks that if you like, have multi-use. And I'm just trying to tease that one.
Can we take this offline and
yeah,
maybe
sure.
I'll get the staff to brief you on the different omnibus management plans
if you
we
would,
have.
and I just flag
Yeah.
that I'm going to use that particular park as an example of one that I think would, in the long term, should sit here, not in a so-called sports park.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
We'll
Thank
make a
you
note
for
of
that.
Sure, that's fine. That's fine. Thank you.
There is no further discussion, so we'll move to the recommendation. Excuse me. And sorry, I was just going to turn to my page. And then please note there's a little addition to that, which is that the normal process is for the feedback for anything such as this to come through Councillor O'Leary's regulatory and hearing committee, which it will do. So that should have been in there, but it got left out. So everyone happy with that? So we've had lots of questions. Is there any discussion before we go to the vote? No? Pretty clear? I'm getting that. So do we have a mover and a seconder for that? Councillor Cass and Councillor, did I see anyone else? Councillor O'Leary, thank you very much. Moved and seconded. We'll put it to the vote, please.
The motion is carried unanimously.
Thank you. So we're going to move to our last item before we go into a closed briefing. We'll try and move through this one relatively quickly because we get regular reports and take the report as read. Although, Calvin, if there's anything particularly important to highlight, please do. And then we'll go to questions. And welcome, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Councillors, good afternoon. Māngai Oli, Māngai Tapora, tēnā korua, ko Kelvin Palahau, ko au te kai whakahaere o te uepu haumaru taone o te kaunihira kirikiri rōnei. Kia ora. Can I introduce Andrew Boubert, the Acting Group Controller for Waikato Civil Defence, and also Justin Douglas, our Capability Development Officer.
So just addressing you all as the leaders and chiefs that you are today for the roles that you hold and the significant work that you do. Me korua hoki ngā mangai Māori te ropu ke te hari ko te ngākau ki te korua. Ia koutou hoki. And just saying how congratulations really to the start being made for our mangai Māori ropu and also looking forward to being working alongside. I'm from Kawhia. Was where my bloodline comes from and goes right along through Aotearoa and then into Whangaroa and then along down the river through into Ngaruawahi and along the line. So the work that I do here is very important to me.
So we're here, but the report can be taken as read. We're happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. We've got that lovely standardised format now for reports, which makes it really helpful. So, councillors, please direct your discussion or questions. Māngai te ua.
Tēnā koutou mihi, atia koutou I rungi nā ahutangi te wā kei te mihi. Hey, just had a couple of questions regarding page 4 of the report. and the score of 56% seemed relatively low. Do you have a comment on that, Kelvin?
It is, but it's a 12% improvement from last year. When I took over, first thing we did was got an external capability assessment done, and that came in at 44%. And so the vol 56 is not where we are ultimately aiming for. We're aiming for a 75. In terms of a journey, a 12% increase over a one-year period was a significant achievement, which was commented on quite positively by the Ministry of Civil Defence in terms of their level of confidence that they now have in the journey that we're on.
And your level of confidence of hitting 75%, do you have a time frame for meeting that target?
I'd expect it within 3 years.
Second question I have is around, I noted the work that's been done on building relationships. I just had an interest on page 6, the second to last paragraph. What did that paragraph mean?
I think it's trying to say in our minds that we started this with a conversation, which was the stepping stone. It was trying to understand where civil defence would sit in terms of relationship Māori, and whether we would be central to it or we are there in a support functionality. We may not have quite characterised that correctly.
Just further to that, I was just interested in building in your work on, obviously it's an encouraging start, but to encourage further in terms of building relationships with Māori communities within the city in the event that a disaster does happen, and focus on those areas where Māori communities are strongest, with kohanga, kura, whare kura, te wānanga, te runanga, kirikiriroa, actually seeing some relationships being developed with those organisations over the coming months to ensure that those communities are able to be communicated with in the event of a disaster.
It is certainly part of our development plan as we work towards that, and we'd be grateful for any input that our mangai wish to participate with us on that, to give us some direction and or guidance would be greatly appreciated.
Happy to, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor O'Leary?
I think you know what I'm going to ask, but in terms of community education and stuff, and I've dropped the ball because I'm supposed to go and see that young gentleman to your left there, and I haven't done that yet, so I will. But it still worries me deeply that other than the shakeout event that we do and a little bit of social media, that Joe Public just has no idea where to go and what to do in an emergency. And I did a test in social media around that and asked that question. And I remember we had a conversation about the, those civil defence yellow signs that we used to have pointing to schools, and because none of that happens anymore. So I guess my question remains, I know that you're doing a lot of work in this area, but generally the big picture stuff, other than shakeout, is there any other things we do to tell people what to do and where to go and what will happen in an emergency?
Well, there is. I mean, it's an ongoing thing. It's not a single person, and it's not just in all of our staff are involved with engaging with the community. Now, that's at through the website level, at both our level and at the group civil defence sites, which have a lot of information. There's a lot of information about home protection, protecting yourself. Do you have a plan? Where to go, what to do. One of your earlier commentary was around civil defence centres and/or there's been a strategic shift away from where every school previously was a civil defence centre by designation. Now, a civil defence centre, there are only currently 3 in Hamilton, and that's Claudelands, FMG Stadium and the library, and we'll look to expand that out as we move out towards Rototuna and or Glenview and out east to give us more coverage. But that a civil defence centre is where we will provide the full range of civil defence services. It's simply that we could not provide services to every school.
No, and I understand that, and I know that you understand that, and your team understands that. But my worry is, and will always be, that the Joe public doesn't know that, and unless it's not enough for us to have the information there, we've got to give it to them.
And I don't know. I'm not sure, with respect, exactly where you're looking then, because there is information out there, and the strategic step change is that we're looking about how do we build resilience in the community. In the immediate aftermath of an incident, there is an expectation that the community will have to show a degree of resilience, because we simply will not be able to respond everywhere at the same time. And so the step change that I keep talking about is not sitting there waiting or going somewhere and expecting us to come along. It's you have to be a degree of self-sufficiency. And so that starts with know your neighbours, what's your local hall, who do you engage with, where do you know you can get local services, have you had community discussions about this? This is more about a community-led responses.
I suggest this could take a bit of time, but what I think I'm hearing Angela wanting a little bit more detail around what we're actually doing to give the public the information they need. And I wonder if that could be part of the report in the next time that you come to us, a focus. And I understand you're going to connect as well in between.
Yeah, but no, actually what I'm driving at is, do we really understand how ready the public is? And have we actually just done a survey? Do we have the budget to do a survey? Can we ask 2,000, 3,000 people through a phone survey to get an idea? I really worry about this, because no one in Christchurch ever prepared or knew that there was an earthquake. And we're 8 years, sorry, I'm debating here, but have we done that? Can we do that? I'm prepared to add it to the resolution. I want a real understanding. I know that you're prepared, and I know that in an event of an emergency, your team and your people would do the right thing, but I worry about the people out there knowing what's going on. So can we do that?
Councillor O'Leary, I'm suggesting we bring it to an update so that we can really ask the important questions that you're asking and have some debate about it, because I don't think we're going to have the time to do it here.
But I'm asking if we've ever done a survey. Have we ever actually asked our people, how ready are you? Have we done that?
No, and I'm not sure that that's quite a straightforward issue you're suggesting, but nonetheless, it might be something that I'm happy to have a further discussion with you offline as well.
Yeah, so let's take it two ways, because I think that's actually relevant information and questions that Councillor O'Leary is raising for all councillors. But I just know that we've run out of time to really delve into it. If you feel strongly about it, Councillor O'Leary, you can put it in the recommendation. But otherwise, I think we, through Lance and Kelvin, we take a note of it, and we ensure that we have a further proper conversation about that aspect. You might be able to help inform us in that, Councillor O'Leary, once you've had your meeting as well. So that would be excellent. I had one very small question in terms of page 5, which is 172 of our report, around councillors' positions. In my previous role, I did some training around that, about out at the airport. It was an excellent facilitated training about the roles of elected members in a natural disaster. And it took a day. It was quite in depth and it was excellent. How are you proposing that this will occur, that councillors, who will be leaders in the community should something happen, how are we going to do that?
The first thing was there's an opportunity to meet with one of our development officers and just do some 20-minute one-on-one with each councillor to try and actually bring you up to speed and answer any particular questions that you have. And some of that will also be a bit of a challenge, actually. How well prepared are you and your family? Because this has got to start here. And if our leaders aren't in a position whereby they are self-prepared and know what to do, that spreads out through the community. There was just an opportunity to actually offer to everyone to have a one-on-one with one of our emergency management officers.
Okay, yep. And I think in that conversation that we can have after today, to think about, are there any other ways in which we can upskill Yeah, you're nodding. Yes, 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 thank
So
you.
the other part was that reciprocity of wanting to know, councillors, you've got the passions here of the constituencies and the places that you live. So I'm wanting to understand that more, because then we can work together in what it is that
Needs
you're
to have-
passionate about in the city.
And we need the right skills to take out to the community at those times. Thank you for that. Councillor Tooman?
Yeah, congratulations on the movement you've made from the July report through to the September report in the education program area, and also the volunteers. Are we struggling at all to get volunteers?
No.
We're not?
No. I mean, through volunteering Waikato, there is an amazing opportunity to leverage off a wide range. What we need to do is grasp up and get some of those potential volunteers pre-checked and have them so they can come straight into the EOC on an as-required basis.
Okay. And one further question. Any development on the warning procedure through cell phones and this sort of stuff? It's been going on for a while.
Yeah, currently the emergency mobile alert and the national warning system, essentially Red Cross Hazards app.
That's still the only one, is it?
Currently Tauranga are doing a project with in-house alerting. There's an expense with them. So other than that, the usual mediums, Facebook, websites.
Because the Red Cross app, it goes ping, and you look at it, it might be in Tauranga or somewhere around the Waikato, but it never seems to happen in Hamilton, so
Thank you.
might be good luck.
Councillor Hamilton, lucky last on this one.
Just quickly, page 172 of our report, or page 5 of yours, it just mentions an email will be distributed again in June. Did I miss that? Was that a requesting meetings with elected members?
June next year.
Yeah, I think I did too.
I understood that was going out from one of our, and to be fair, I've lost sight of it. It was supposed to go out from one of our emergency management officers to each of the councillors, which was to start that conversation and give the invite.
Okay, so we need to refresh that anyway.
That's
'cause
right.
it
Look forward to it.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Let's go to the recommendation. Sorry, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Tooman. And a seconder, please. Councillor Hamilton.
In there that addresses Angela's issue, like a date or a time when something's going to get done with regard to raising
Well,
visibility for councillors on this?
I did give Councillor O'Leary the opportunity to do that if she wished. Otherwise, I've given her the assurance that it will be covered off in the very... Yeah,
Okay.
I think we can ensure that all councillors get what they need on that area of by the next report. Yeah. We'll put an action point in the minute to make sure that it isn't lost as well. Yeah, I know, but I think that there is valuable information for all councillors, and that's why people are showing an interest in that too. So thank you for that. Vote, please. Oh, you, sorry, okay, yes indeed.
Sorry, look,
Go.
Yeah. I continue to constantly worry about this stuff, and it is because I sat in a committee room some years ago after the Christchurch earthquakes, and we were talking about risks. And it was and what risks do we have? What do we think as elected members are risks to our city in the event of a major incident? And someone, an external person, told us the story that has stuck with me and sometimes keeps me awake at night, that elected members and officials sat round the room and did exactly what we did prior to the earthquakes. And even when they threw up on the board the black swan events, which is like a UFO crashing or a meteor falling from the sky, no one put down an earthquake. And I really genuinely worry about that. I've been raising this issue, and with respect, Madam Chair, taking a note of it is still, I'm just going to keep raising it. I have the utmost confidence in our team. The new building that we've got, the new employees that you've brought into the team are exceptional. My concern is public talk to me and they tell me they don't know, they're not prepared, and I understand they've got to have their own resilience. The second thing is people would look to us, these elected members, to understand, to know what to do, to who to call, and we don't have that. And I've also been asking for some years now. I did an exceptional exercise with some school children in our civil defence office, and I've asked and asked and asked and asked for this to happen with all elected members, and I got a full understanding of exactly what would happen in the event of an emergency, and it gave me massive comfort. And I saw that this is this huge machine and I would feel safe, and as an elected member I know several things that other elected members may not know and what to do, but believe you me, our people would come to us. And you don't want 13 not 13, you'd only have 12 elected members because the mayor takes control, running around not knowing what to do, where to go, who to see, who to talk to. And other than that backpack that we have, it's all the information that we have. So I'm going to continue raising those two issues until I get some satisfaction that we're getting this right. This is absolute. I have 100% confidence in our team and our staff. My worry is for the people of the city, and Christchurch didn't know. And you know, I went down there in July and I was gobsmacked that that place still, 8 years later, is it? 7 years later, still looks like there's evidence everywhere of an earthquake. People's lives and hundreds of millions of dollars because they didn't think it was going to happen. And we live in a safe city, and maybe we only get these gentle updated reports because we don't think that as well, and I worry about that.
Thank you. Thank you. I just might say a few comments myself, and largely in support of what Councillor O'Leary has said, because as I alluded to, actually, I mean, you might find this amusing, Councillor O'Leary, but when I was in the regional arena, we went to Whitianga and we told them that the imminent possibility of tsunami, and the whole room, council and other people there, fell about laughing. They also reported this ridiculous story in the Waikato Times going, ha, 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 it's going to be a tsunami, silly Waikato Regional Council. But after the Boxing Day tsunami and all the new science that's come to bear on things like White Island, and if we had a big earthquake in Chile and what it would do to our Coromandel Coast, no one is laughing now, and we've got all of these corresponding systems in place like the tsunami warnings. It just shows that Angela's absolutely right. If you don't talk and understand what might happen to you, you know, you're on a back foot from day one. We talk about earthquakes, but that, of course, isn't always the number one risk. There's flood and all sorts of... There's flood, there's even mass disease, you know, infections, pandemics, endemics, all of those kind of things. Just can take us by surprise, and I think it's really important to get ahead of it. I don't know what, like Councillor Hamilton, I'm not quite sure. I may have overlooked my particular invitation too, but something's fallen down there. We'll fix that. I think it's really important, because we will be seen as leaders in the community because we live amongst them, we work amongst them, that you haven't got 12 people running around doing more harm than good. And I understand from the Christchurch situation that one of the learnings was exactly that not all elected members were terribly helpful. Now, they thought they were doing the right thing, but they actually can get in the way, and well-meaning as it is. And so we do really know, we do need to know as elected members what we can do, should do, how we should do it, what the parameters of our help and support would look like. And so I really look forward to that happening. On that, we'll go to the vote.
The motion is carried unanimously.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everyone. We can have a quick, at past, we'll go straight into the closed briefing. That gives you 6 minutes to have a stretch and whatever.